Good afternoon. I am Lovely Grace F. Sampaga. So for today's video, we are going to discuss about the authentic materials versus non-authentic materials. Language is used as a medium of communication. People utter the language to communicate either in the form of oral or written language. Rogers and Medley, 1988, state that people communicate with purposes. He explains that through language, people exchange the information, express their ideas and emotions, which makes communication meaningful. As we know, there are many languages spoken in this world, and all of them share the same function, that is for communication. As a foreign language, English has been widely used by many speakers. Unfortunately, there has been a gap between the language taught in the classroom and the language used in real life. For example, English conversation taught in the textbooks and the classroom tend to be unable to represent the actual model of how it is conducted in real life of the native speakers. Thus, some conversation activities conducted by the students seem unnatural. Moreover, it is argued that although the learners have learned English in the classroom for years, they are still unable to employ English in real life. Another example here is we as a Filipino students. Even we studied English language for many years in our classroom or in our school, we even use Filipino language because that is what we accustomed in our real life situation. As a result, there has been a demand to teach English in a more communicative method. It is suggested that the language taught in the classroom should reflect how the native speakers use it. Therefore, authentic materials become popular. Some examples of authentic materials are magazine, map, news, radio or TV show, newspaper, reality show, and poster. Meanwhile, the textbook is an example of non-authentic material, which mostly teaches use in the classroom. Many experts have agreed that the use of authentic materials in teaching English in the classroom results in many benefits. The most important component, which should be the concern of the teachers, is on the way the authentic materials should be delivered and used in classroom activity to get maximum learning outcome. However, teachers and scholars also argue that non-authentic materials are also effective for teaching English because those materials such as textbooks are designed for teaching purposes so that it suits the learner's ability and needs. Authentic materials versus non-authentic materials. Authentic materials. Authentic materials are print, video, and audio materials that students encounter in their daily lives, such as change of address forms, job applications, menus, voicemail messages, radio programs, and video. Different kinds of authentic materials. The first one is reala or object. Second, printed text like books and newspapers. Different kinds of images like photographs and posters. The last one is multimedia materials, which are audio tapes, videotapes, CDs, DVDs, and computer-based programs. Reasons for using authentic materials in classroom. First, they enable the learners to hear, read, and produce language as it is used in the target culture. Next, they reflect real use language in culturally appropriate contexts. They are interesting and motivating. They can be chosen according to learners' interests or needs. or be chosen by learners themselves for their own purposes. Last, through their use, learners can begin to develop survival language skills, learning to develop tolerance for what they cannot understand in order to get as much information as they can form what they do understand. Guidelines for choosing authentic materials. The materials are appropriate for the learner age group in terms of interest and level of language proficiency. The materials can contain examples of the point of the lesson, illustrating authentic use of the language points. The materials are in a style of English learners are most likely to hear and use. For example, listening text can include any of the various forms of native speakers' English and or examples of native and non-native English that are likely to be used in learners' environment. Materials are available locally on the internet or have been collected by teacher. The materials can be used in classroom for authentic like tasks or activities. Advantages of authentic materials. They have a positive effect on learners' motivation. They provide authentic cultural information. They provide exposure of real language. They relate more closely to learners' needs. They support a more creative approach to teaching. Disadvantages of authentic materials contain difficult language, unneeded vocabulary items, and complex language structures. Authentic materials may be too culturally. The biggest disadvantage of using authentic materials is that they contain more unfamiliar language that learners can possibly cope with. Often, they are too long, dense, and complex. Non-authentic materials. Non-authentic materials are used by teachers or learners to facilitate the learning of language. Here are different kinds of non-authentic materials: cassettes, videos, CD-ROMs, DVDs, dictionaries, grammar books, workbooks, photocopies, etc. Disadvantages of non-authentic materials. The disadvantages of using non-authentic is the students are hardly to be a good reader because they would not be acquiring real language. Many students will be bored with the same reading text that are not attracting them, and it will make them passive and be a slow reader. The students can feel that they are not used to be challenged to be good reader by variety of the text. Authentic materials enable learners to interact with the real language and content rather than the form. Learners feel that they are learning a target language that is used outside the classroom. Non-authentic materials help students to understand and motivate and get real, useful, and meaningful language rather than the form.